Most of you are probably already aware of this situation. If you're not, I'll have a video linked in the description below where I go into much greater detail on this. But long story short, AT&T has owned Warner Bros. Since 2018. So they own the films, they own DC Comics, they own the games. And basically, since 2018, we haven't seen a lot of AAA Warner Bros. Games releases. We we've seen MK11 and some Lego games, but we haven't seen like the Harry Potter RPG, we haven't seen an Arkham game, we haven't seen Rocksteady's next game, we haven't seen the next Monolith game. And so from AT&T's perspective, and they are in a ton of debt with Warner Brothers, they're looking at these companies that they're pushing millions of dollars into every single year, and they're not seeing enough of a return to justify keeping them around. So the plan is really to sell them off, and let's say it's to Activision. There are 5 companies currently expressing interest. The 3 that we knew of before, yesterday, were Take-Two Interactive, Activision, and EA. So, let's say EA purchases Warner Brothers games. Now, Warner Brothers, or AT&T is looking at this as, EA will then finance these games. They'll finance the next Batman game. They will produce the next Batman game. They will publish the next Batman game. So, like, all of these costs and all of this stuff that they have to do, in terms of providing financing and resources for these products is taken care of. Now, what AT&T will do is they will license out IPs like Batman, for example, and then part of that licensing deal is that they will get revenue from it. So they're seeing this as a win for them. They don't have to put money into these properties anymore, but they will still see a return from these game projects. So they're cutting costs but retaining a lot of the revenue for it. And I do see a lot of people saying, well, they're just selling the studios. They're not selling the IPs. Here's the thing. If they're selling off Warner Brothers games, you had better believe that there are going to be licensing deals already in place as soon as they're sold. So, they're not going to sell off Warner Brothers Games Montreal, but then withhold the Batman intellectual property. And you have to think, again, they're looking at how to generate the most revenue. So they're going to license out these big IPs that make a lot of revenue. So they might as well be selling off the IPs as well. And it's not that's, semantically, that's not the case. And you can argue semantics in this situation all day, but it's just not helpful. At the end of the day, they are looking to sell off Warner Brothers games, and with them will go these IPs through licensing deals. So this 4th company that is now looking to purchase Warner Brothers games is Microsoft, and we still don't know who the 5th company is. It could be Sony, it could be Ubisoft, who knows. But it's definitely an interesting situation, and kind of the discussion that I wanted to have today is, would it be better for Microsoft to purchase Warner Brothers games than EA, Take-Two Interactive, or Activision? Honestly, I think that there are certain things about this that would be a lot better, and there are certain things that would make this even worse. And this almost delves into a larger problem when it comes to console exclusives and console wars. And I mean, it's really frustrating and tricky. And Sony has been so smart, and they've spent a lot of years investing into their exclusives. So now, I mean, we're getting top-selling games like The Last of Us Part 2, The Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, Uncharted. They have a whole slew of really great exclusives, and Xbox just does not have that same recognition. I hear people argue, well, Halo, all day long. I'm sorry, but Halo is no longer it is not as relevant as The Last of Us 2 these days, for example. Sony has definitely won console wars in terms of exclusives. You can argue that you prefer the Xbox. You can argue that it's more user-friendly, whatnot. I have both consoles, and I don't know, like the Xbox, it has a really great controller. It has a really great user interface. It has a lot of really great features. But if I were looking, if I could only keep one, I'd keep the PlayStation for the simple fact that it has more games that I enjoy and more that I can play on it. And their exclusives are far more appealing than Xbox's exclusives. That's not to say that the Xbox exclusives are bad games. They just don't have the same appeal on any level to me that a lot of the Sony exclusives do. So if Microsoft were to purchase Warner Brothers games, The one thing that I think would be a huge improvement from these other companies is I don't feel that Microsoft would push in microtransactions. I don't feel that they would have a quantity over quality attitude. If Activision had the Batman franchise, I feel like they would milk it to death. I think we'd be getting a really subpar Batman game every single year. That's not to say that that's definitely what would happen, but I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. And with Microsoft, I feel that these games would pretty much continue, and these studios would continue operating pretty much as they are. The huge caveat is, and the big concern that a lot of people have over this, is what would Microsoft choose to turn into Xbox exclusives? What content would Microsoft reduce to just being an Xbox exclusive? And what games would turn into timed exclusives? And I am not of the opinion that Microsoft is quite as strict when it comes to exclusives as Sony is. They are far more willing to go cross-platform with their games, especially on the PC, since Windows 10 is owned by Microsoft as well. And they try to build this ecosystem with their games, and it's all about the brand, whereas with PlayStation and Sony, it's all about having the exclusives. And do you own our console? Well, you better if you want to play these games. And this is where we get to the point where I stop liking consoles. And not that I don't like them as hardware, but it gets really silly trying to justify spending, upwards of $1,000 just to have, the best of both worlds. If I could only buy the PS5 or the Xbox Series X currently, it would be PlayStation 5, because I know that we're going to get Spider-Man exclusives. If they do a Last of Us Part 3, that's going to be on there. If we get more Uncharted games, they'll be on there. I just know that the exclusives will be better. Now, if all the DC games become Xbox exclusives, then I will feel that I have to purchase both because I'm invested in both, of those games. Now, the fact that I would be looking at spending upwards of $1,000 just to experience these games is kind of ridiculous. And they're treating exclusives more and more like streaming properties. There's like different streaming services. Like there's Amazon exclusives, there's Netflix exclusives, and eventually, you might be able to purchase one on a different platform. But for the most part, the streaming services will have exclusive shows to try and draw people to buy a subscription. The difference is that an Amazon subscription is much more reasonable. I don't have to go and spend $500 on a piece of hardware to view, Stranger Things on Netflix. I don't have to go out and buy a $500 piece of hardware, to watch. I don't watch a lot of exclusives, I'll be honest with you, but to watch Servant from M. Night Shyamalan on Apple TV. Now, and the thing is, like, once I finish watching stuff, I can cancel a subscription as well. With these pieces of hardware, there were so many people who bought a PlayStation 4 just to play Spider-Man, and it's almost silly to me because, yes, it's a game that is really good, it's really great, but is it necessarily worth $400? I mean, you be the judge, for sure, but I don't know. I just think that it gets a little bit egregious when companies expect us to bend over backwards to play these games. And if they really want to go in this exclusive direction, I think that they ought to start, streaming games, or finding ways to stream through other consoles, or finding ways to make these things more accessible. Because games are going to make the leap from $60 to $70 now as well. We are paying a lot of money to experience these games. And honestly, the biggest loss that these companies see in terms of profits are from these consoles, from these pieces of hardware. I feel that they would be far better served just keeping things more cross-platform, or, finding ways to stream games. And it's kind of a tough situation because I see both sides of this. I see why, Sony is releasing Spider-Man games exclusively. It is a good deal for them. They get all of the money and all of the revenue for that. I would understand if Xbox wanted to make the Arkham franchise an Xbox exclusive. That would be a huge tentpole franchise that would drive a lot of business toward them. I'm just saying that I feel that it's egregious because not only are we talking about like a $70 game now, but we're also talking about a 500 piece, of hardware to run this thing on. And that is a lot for a consumer to do. So there just needs to be a different solution. Now, like I was saying, I don't think that Microsoft would be as strict as Sony is. However, I do think that they would take at least one tentpole franchise like Mortal Kombat or Arkham and make it an Xbox exclusive. I think that a lot of other games would be timed exclusives. For example, the Lego games. I could see them saying like all Lego games will come out a month early on Xbox. I think every game would have, at the very least, would have Xbox exclusive content. So, like I said, it would be a good deal for them. I just think that they need to find better ways. And all of these companies really do. The model of the console wars is becoming outdated because of the expense that goes into these games and these pieces of hardware. It's becoming very difficult to justify doing exclusives, really. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. This is definitely something that I'll be keeping my eye on, and I'll continue talking about if we see more developments in it. And I just really hope that we can start seeing new models from these companies, or at least more accessibility. I think that it's been really great that Sony has allowed some of their games to come to the PC. Microsoft has always been very good at that, again, because they own the PC. I just think that keeping exclusives so exclusive, for example, the fact that Spider-Man will never be playable on Xbox is kind of absurd, just the scale of that game. The thing is, if Sony could come out with a streaming service, like if I could open the PlayStation app on Roku and not have to own a PlayStation to stream Spider-Man, then that would be a different story, and it wouldn't necessarily seem as absurd. But I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm rambling at this point. But again, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.